Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our February 2021 Nature 101 program, Backyard Birders. My name is Paige Engelbrektsson, and I am the Nature Center Education Specialist for the Highlands Biological Foundation. The foundation supports natural history research and education in the Southern Appalachians, primarily here at the Highlands Biological Station, through programs like this one. If you're not familiar with our Nature 101 series, it's a program in the off-season where we take a natural history topic, question, or idea and explore it. And when I was looking at the schedule for this spring, I noticed that I had a lot of really cool birding opportunities on my calendar. Things like the Christmas bird count, the Audubon bird count, and the Great Backyard Bird Count, which actually was this past weekend. And while I am all about promoting those and getting other people to engage them, I haven't actually taken part, which is because every time they've come up, I think, I really don't know enough about birds to do this. I'm not really a birder. And then it occurred to me that if that's how I think, when I know a bit about birds and a bit about the birds that are around here, there are probably a lot of people out there who don't think they're qualified to be birders, or that it's boring, or that you need an awful lot of equipment, or that you have to know a lot. And that didn't really sit right with me. So I reached out to some birders that I know, and I picked their brains about who could be a birder and how to get started and what birding was really like, and why they did it. So we're going to cut to their interviews. I hope that you enjoy hearing from them as much as I did. My thanks to all of them and to you all. I'll see you on the other side.
So my name is Jason Love. I'm the Associate Director of Highlands Biological Station. I've been birding for about 27 years now. So I started around 94, 93 when I was in college.
Hi, I'm Jenny Stowers, and I have been birding for over 15 years, though I started somewhat before that because I taught biology for 30, so birding was a very natural fit for me.
I'm Canty Worley. I live here in Highlands, and I do gardens and landscapes in the area. And I've been birding for about 5 or 6 years. Our dear friends Stowe and Jenny Stowers sort of took us under their wing way back when at these Highlands Biological Foundation functions, and found a kindred spirit in us and us in them, and they taught us about how to be bird watchers and to go birding and some of the ins and outs of it, and we've been going ever since.
I got into birding because my husband introduced me to birding, and we have a house on Dauphin Island, Alabama, which is one of the 10 top birding spots in the United States for migratory birds and shorebirds. So it was a very easy place to learn to bird, though you can learn to bird anywhere.
I got into birding primarily because I like to be outside, and I was curious about what these creatures were that were flying around and that I was hearing. And so I was just curious. And then once I started learning more about birds and watching them and listening, that just kind of piqued my interest even more. It's something you can do anytime, anywhere, which is also nice. So whenever I'm traveling, I can stop, get out the binoculars, and even if it's just for 5 minutes, and I can find birds. So that's kind of fun. My favorite part is being outside. If birding took place inside, I probably wouldn't be as interested. But because this is an activity that takes you outside, often in beautiful places, and often different places that maybe you wouldn't go because there's good bird habitat that may not be good hiking habitat. So sometimes birding takes you out in the thicket, so kind of the tangled bank. Areas that may not look very well maintained, but that's where the birds are. They like thickets and the wild places. So yeah, the outdoors is why I bird primarily.
One of my favorite parts about birding is definitely the adventure of it, the thrill of the chase and the excitement of the unknown. We have these birds all around us, and we have this opportunity to get to know them if we'll just take a moment to look at them and see them for who they are.
Anybody can be a birder. If you have natural curiosity and a little patience and get the right equipment, everybody can be a birder. And that starts really with some good books, some good apps, and a good pair of binoculars, and trying to learn to bird at lower levels like feeders or low cover. And then you will be able to work your way to the more dense canopies to find birds.
I think a birder is anybody who's taken an interest in learning more about birds. It can be that simple. I think that the best way to begin birding is to walk outside your door and see what birds are all around you. We're so fortunate here to be surrounded by so much natural area that we have birds almost around every corner. Now, do we take the time to get to know them, to call them by name, to listen to their song, to hear them and to realize what they're up to out there? What is their behavior? Are they feeding? Are they getting ready to nest? Are they just in transition? These are all clues that the birds are giving us, and they're an entree to us learning more about them.
So for someone who likes birds, but maybe they don't consider themselves a birder, but they want to maybe learn more, there's a lot of great resources out there, from books to apps. So there is a free app called Merlin, which allows you to download all the birds from North America to your phone and includes their calls. And so that's a great resource. So you can look at a bird, or if you hear a bird and you can maybe narrow it down, you can use that to figure out what kind of bird you have. Most birders keep lists, life lists. Some people get as far down as keeping county lists. If you like to keep track of what you see, another good site is eBird. It's another app that allows you to track your sightings, but you can also share those data with others, including researchers, so you're actually contributing to science. If you just like to watch birds and don't care about lists, that's great too.
Well, my first tip, and this is not always easy to come by, is to fall in with other birders who you sort of admire. Now, I was spoiled that I had two of the best kind of show me the ropes, but there's a whole world of birders out there that you can access on the internet, on sites like eBirds. You can see people posting their sightings from the day from anywhere in the world. You can narrow it down to Macon County, or you can look over in India somewhere and find out what people are seeing. I think getting in tune with sort of the bigger birding network that's out there is a great place to start, and you can see what other people are doing and sort of learn by imitation. Imitation is the best form of flattery, I think, and you can learn a lot about birding from watching other birders and how they go about their day out in the world of trying to find the next bird.
If I was going to start now getting into birding, I think I would begin in my backyard with feeders or a lot of native plants. We know that Highlands brings challenges in terms of bear country, but you can be careful with your feeders. And if you live elsewhere part of the year, you just provide feeders and water sources in your backyard, lots of different foods, and you will bring in more birds than you can imagine.
Well, it's hard to beat the Highlands Biological Station here. I must say I'm partial to that, and particularly the North Campus on the lake and in the pollinator gardens and in the forest at the edges. That's a great place to see a lot of different birds all in one. We have known hot spots in this area, and the Biological Station is one of them. Sunset Rock is one. You can go on any of the many trails on the Highlands Plateau Greenway and probably see a tremendous amount of birds. You can go out to places like the old ranger station on Flat Mountain Road or the experimental tree farm out on Flat Mountain Road. I like to go to the meadow at the mountain out in Scaly and see if I can catch the indigo buntings, having their way with the place in the summer. But really the thing is, it's all around you, and I may go out to a birding hotspot spend an hour out there and see a handful of birds, and then all of a sudden come back into town and be walking on the sidewalk and see something I'd really been looking for. This thing flies into the scene, so you never really know. Sometimes you can't try too hard. You have to kind of let the birds come to you and be ready for them when they do come, and that means maybe having a pair of binoculars handy. If not with you at all times, but in your car or in your bag, and if you don't have binoculars, just sort of being ready to see birds that come into your space.
The birding hotspots near Highlands for me are at the Botanical Garden, has a vast array of species. I love to go to some of the more open meadows and bird. And I also love to go up and drive the parkway, which has many, many birds.
So one of the more interesting places to bird around Highlands is Whitesides Mountain. Whitesides in the spring, you can pick up Canada warblers, black-throated blue warblers. But what most birders go there for is to see the peregrine falcons. So they begin to start looking at nests and start their breeding behavior around January or so, and they can be found there through about August. More or less. So they nest on the steep cliffs of Whitesides, and often you can see the birds flying around and calling to each other. So that's a really special place in Highlands to look at birds. Other places, Harris Lake. Sometimes in the wintertime you can find interesting waterfowl, such as buffleheads. There's always Canada geese there that you can see. Our own lake, Lindenwood Lake, this is a birding trail. The Highlands Biological Station is part of the North Carolina Birding Trail. So we have, I want to say, around 124 species that have been found at the station, according to eBird. So again, you can get some interesting waterfowl, particularly in the wintertime. And in the spring and summertime, you can pick up a lot of neat warblers. So it's also a good place to bird. And the trails are nice and not too rugged. So get you outside and see some nice birds. Mirror Lake, you can pick up some waterfowl there and some other birds of interest. Cliffside Lake, which is on the Forest Service. There's a nice loop trail there that's fun to bird. And then just the national forest. We have loads of national forest around that have miles and miles of trails. So those are great properties to bird. Also, I want to mention that the Highlands Cashier's Land Trust has properties around, so you can check their website, and they have some trails that you can pick up some good birds.
One of my favorite tools to use when I'm in the field and birding is the iBird app on the phone, and I don't even have the newest edition. I just have whatever I got a few years ago when I started birding, and it is an invaluable tool to look at all of the birds that are out there with pictures, with descriptions, with songs. You can play their calls, and if you're questioning whether or not you're hearing a bird, play that call and see if it sort of lines up. You can also narrow your search field in this app, and so if I'm looking at birds in North Carolina or Alabama, I can narrow that down so that I'm not seeing all the birds of North Dakota and Northern California as well, and I'm going to be able to pick out my birds with less of an option base there. It's a very handy app. Like everything, your phone is always with you and in your pocket, so it just takes a second to pull it out and make use of it. Now, that being said, my teachers would have told me you definitely want to have your field guides on hand as well. Sibley, Crosby, these are great books. These are reference books. These are something that you should have in your home and in your backpack because they can give you an even more in-depth look at particular bird species.
I have found when I first started birding, we carried books around in pockets and looked like Jane Hathaway. But cell phones have made a huge difference in all of this because you can download a couple of apps. I recommend iBird Pro and Merlin, but there are many others. I also suggest that you get a couple of reference books to keep at home, and the best two, I believe, are Sibley and the Crosley Guide. which they have different approaches. I also suggest that you investigate a pair of binoculars before you buy, because if you go to a store, they're going to sell you the biggest ones, and they're not right for birding. You need 10 by 30s up to about, or 8 by 32s up to about 10 by 40s. And for some types of birding, a nice lightweight spotting scope is good.
You know, you think about birding or bird watchers as, you know, quiet people walking around with their glasses and their binoculars and, you know, taking in the natural world. And it is all of that, and that's wonderful. But one of my most exciting moments was down on the coast of Alabama on Dauphin Island. And my friend Stowe Stowers took us out to look for northern gannets, who are a seabird who will dive from high in the sky and send themselves like a projectile missile down into the water and to catch their fish. And we had to run, we had to get there at the right moment, and we had to spot them with long scopes, and it was almost like watching fighter pilots in the air. It was almost that thrill of the chase coming to pass, and I realized this is not some sort of slow-moving, boring activity. This is exciting. This is what I want to do in my life, and it kind of took it to another level for me, and that was a very pivotal moment for me.
My favorite birding memory is one that happened at a national wildlife refuge. And I had just started birding, and I saw this bird swimming across a pond. And it looked like an owl because its eyes were so huge. And all of a sudden, a bald eagle swooped down and jerked it up out of the water. And it was a northern harrier, which is kind of like a big hawk. And it flew off with it. And I looked at the person I was birding with. I thought, I've just been in a National Geographic moment.
So one particular memory I have about birding was we were birding in Townsend, Tennessee, just outside the boundary of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I was aware of these fabulous birders. This was 20 years ago, so I was still relatively new to birding, and they're much better than I was about identifying the species. And we went to this small little parcel within the city limits of Townsend, which is this quaint little town, and it was just grown up in weeds and shrubs, but it was perfect habitat for some rare species. And so we saw a Nelson sharp-tailed sparrow, which is a rare species passing through, and a couple other just really rare sparrows. And we concluded that they were in that spot because the habitat was great, but it was really the geology. It was a limestone geology, so the soils were a lot sweeter, for lack of a better term. And so the geology led to this really diverse plant community. And so the birds flock to that area. Going there today, it's no longer there. It's a parking lot. And so that's one of the being a birder, you become a conservationist because you see habitats that once supported birds that have been modified by humans. So when you like birds and you see that their habitat shrinking or that they're declining, you become a conservationist.
I think I've mentioned this, but learn the birds, get to know the birds that are around you every day. But go farther than that. Know why birds are in an area and behaving a certain way. It could be that there's a certain wildflower seed head left over from last year that they're feeding on all winter. It could be a certain, fruiting deciduous holly bush that we have in the yard somewhere that is like signaling out to them with those bright red berries in the middle of the snow when there's nothing else out there to eat. Here I am, I'm an emergency food source for you. And in that regard, we can play a role to help birds. We can play a role to help the entire ecosystem by planting our gardens, maintaining our land with wildlife and biodiversity in mind. It's not enough anymore that gardens be pretty. Gardens need to be functional. Gardens need to be a refuge for wildlife, because while we may be surrounded by it here in Highlands, in many parts of the world, we are losing it at an alarming rate. So anything we can do in our own backyards or on our city streets and our public parks and anywhere else that we may think of to support wildlife through plantings and ecosystem management is going to be a win for the environment.
I encourage everyone who loves nature to find their level of birding. It will enhance everything and it follows you everywhere. Driving becomes dangerous as you ride down the road looking for birds, but it is a wonderful hobby that you can do at any age.
All right, folks, I hope that you enjoyed getting to hear from our guest experts, because I know I really enjoyed the chance to interview them. It's my first time doing interviews, and especially my first time putting them together for a video. So if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, I would definitely love to hear from them. I also want to hear your answers to these kinds of questions. I love hearing about people's experiences with nature and connecting to it and finding out why they're so interested. I really got into birding, my level of birding, should I say, because I found that bird song and bird activity could tell me what was happening in the forest. Blue jay alarm calls or robin singing gives you a little bit of an insight into what's happening in the greater landscape. So that's definitely one of my favorite parts of birding. If you are interested in getting more into birds, definitely heed their advice. You can also look into some really cool citizen science projects, and there are a ton out there. If you have feeders or native plants that birds feed at, check out Feeder Watch. If you want to go find birds' nests out in the wild or have nest boxes, check out Nest Watch. If you want to be looking not just for what birds are in the area, but their behavior to determine whether they're breeding, the North Carolina Bird Atlas is a new initiative launching this year. I'm going to be taking a peek into it, seeing what it's all about. And finally, Eco Explorer is a really cool opportunity for anybody who has small children or grandchildren in their lives, where they are in their ornithology badge season. So if you go around and the kids take photos and identify birds at a hot spot and then submit it, they get extra points for submitting their observations. Last but not least, we have the Monitoring Avian Productivity Survey returning to the station for its second year of bird banding, funded by the foundation. I'm excited to see if we get any birds from last year and to see what we get this year as well. So if you'd like to support the MAPS project or these kinds of programs, please consider making a donation to the foundation. We are going to have our next garden tour on the first Monday in April at 11:30. I'm hoping that it will be good enough weather for me to run a live stream. My hands and lips are currently a little bit cold, so maybe in another 2 weeks it'll be different. Fingers crossed. But keep an eye out. And as always, if you'd like for more updates and heads up on what we're doing, sign up for our e-blast at highlandsbiological.org. Thank you all so much for joining. I look forward to hearing your responses to the kinds of questions I was asking our interviewers, and hopefully seeing you at our next program. Thank you so much. Bye.